So this lesson is about the adaptations of extremophiles. So by the end of the lesson, you should be able to name 5 extreme conditions that microorganisms can live, explain the adaptations of some extremophiles to live in certain conditions, and explain how bacteria in extreme conditions are important for other organisms. So what are extremophiles? So they are organisms, usually microorganisms, that have adapted to survive in extreme conditions. So as an example of an extremophile that survives in extreme cold conditions, the single-celled algae, which I'll try and pronounce, Chlamydomonas nivalis, survive in extreme cold. So they contain an extra red pigment that protects it from intensely bright light in snowy places. So it would look like red snow basically, or snow with a bit of a red hint to it. And this red pigment also absorbs radiation, helping to keep the cells warm in the cold conditions. They also grow flagella that helps them move back to the surface after more snow. So an example of an extremophile surviving in extreme heat, the environment is the hot springs or hydrothermal vents in deep oceans, and they are called thermophiles because thermo means temperature, so they're extremophiles living in high temperatures. So thermophiles living in extremely hot temperatures have proteins that don't break down easily. So most proteins denature at over sort of 40 degrees, whereas these will denature at a lot higher temperature. So they have special proteins that don't break down as easy. Okay, next one, surviving with no light deep in the ocean. Well, as well as photosynthesis, there is actually another type of synthesizing molecules using chemosynthesis, which is where you combine chemicals. So synthesis means combining and chemo means chemicals. So combining chemicals from water using heat to make sugars for food. Too many nutrients, e.g. salts, such as found in the red salt flat, they have high levels of other chemicals like amino acids inside cells that stop the water moving out. Because otherwise they would just shrivel up, so it kind of stops the osmotic movement of water because they have lots of amino acids inside them. Next one, surviving with no oxygen. Some extremophiles can use chemicals like sulfur instead of oxygen to release energy in anaerobic respiration. So as an example of this, fermentation of glucose by yeast. The equation for that would be sugar plus yeast goes to alcohol plus carbon dioxide. So the final example is extremophiles helping other microorganisms. So they have a symbiotic relationship where the extremophiles will help usually bigger organisms that they live on or in. So they will provide nutrients for other organisms to live. So as a question, how do bacteria help ruminants like cows? So they live in conditions with low oxygen inside the cow's gut, and they help them to digest cellulose in grass, because without the extremophiles, the ruminant would not be able to digest that cellulose. So the extremophiles live in the low oxygen conditions and they digest cellulose for the cows. The cows will probably give them minerals or something in return. Symbiotic relationship, they usually both get something from the cows will get the digested cellulose and the extremophiles will probably get some kind of nutrients. Okay, so that is it for extremophiles. And here is a task that I would like you to do.